if I can. The whole issue of praise. Sometimes people are afraid of praise. Now when I say praise, I mean shining that flashlight on people when they're doing something, right? Or let them see themselves. When they're doing something good, let them see it for themselves. It's interesting that if we would ask people, let's take an example here, for example. Okay. Let's say this is a teacher. Your name is Angie. And Angie's at church on Sunday. And she's coming out of church and she's headed for a car. And she's a second grade teacher. And Angie sees out of corner eye these two parents and this child coming towards her. And she doesn't think she can get to her car in time. As we were saying in athletics, the parents had the angle. So they cut her off. And they go up to Angie and say, may we talk to you for a minute? He said, well, sure, go ahead. And well, we just want to talk to you about our son, John, Angie. You know, you have him in school. Oh, yeah, I have him in school. I like working with John. Well, let me tell you a little bit about John. When John was in first grade, he really didn't like school very much. And we had trouble every morning. We'd wake him up in the morning, and he would cry all the way to school. He hated school. Didn't like it at all. It was just terrible. And sometimes, you know, he wanted to stay home, and he faked like he was sick and everything. And he hated to read. He didn't like to read. And he had trouble in the neighborhood. He didn't get along with anybody in the neighborhood. He had fights all the time, and then I got in trouble with other parents, and it was terrible. And, you know, also so much trouble in our household. I didn't even get along with my husband very well. It was just terrible. And then this year, you started working with John. Boy, it's just incredible what happened. He likes to go to school. You know, he stays after school with you all the time, doesn't he? He likes to be in your room. He doesn't even like to come home sometimes. He just wants to be with you. And he loves to read. He wants to take us to every Saturday. We got to take him to the library. Give him another book. He likes to read. You know, he gets along with kids now. We have kids over our house, and it's wonderful. You know, and I'm even getting along better with my husband now. You know that? You just made such an incredible difference in the lives of John. Thank you for touching his life and touching our lives. You're just an incredible teacher. Now, when that happens, how do you feel about that? How do you feel? And my hunch is that almost all of you in this room have had some sort of impact like that. My hunch is, people sometimes, rarely do they ever come back and tell you. But my hunch is it happens. And when that happens, if somebody affirms in you, what happens? After that happens to Angie there, is she going to go out and sell insurance then? Now my hunch is, what's going to happen? What's she going to say inside? You see, we tend to do what people applaud us for. And what a leader is more than anything else, a leader is not a devil's advocate, but a cheerleader. And indeed is cheering for other people. Cheering for that person who may still be way overweight, but they're starting to walk a half mile each night. Just a half mile. And you may even say to yourself, I don't think it's going to do much good, because he's still eating 3 Twinkies at lunch, you know? But you know, you got something cooking there, you know, and you just feed on that positive piece, right? Is that what you do when you work with kids? Huh? You find that positive piece? And indeed you run with it, and that's so important. And what the leader is a cheerleader. But praise, sometimes people are afraid of that. But this poem says it as well as anybody can say. It's from Mary Haskins' journal, actually, 1926. Praise. Find out the best in a person and tell him about it. We all need that. I have grown up on praise, and it has made me humble. It will always make a person long to deserve the praise. Praise means understanding. We are all fine and great fundamentally. Overestimation of one another is impossible. Learn to see the greatness and loveliness in one another. And most important, to tell one another of it when we see it. Not long ago, I was in Wisconsin giving a presentation at the statewide wellness conference. And during that time, it was a multi-day conference, and I would travel back down to Chicago to be with my dad. He was living in Wilmette, Illinois, and the conference was in Kenosha, which is just over the border into Wisconsin. And I want to read this story to you because I think it reflects most closely my life with my father. He's died. And this story speaks to that situation. It was the day my father died. It was a bleak, cold, blustery day in July. In a small hospital room, I was supporting in my arms when his eyes suddenly widened with a look of awe I'd never seen before. I was certain that the angel of death had entered the room. Then my father slumped back. I lowered his head gently onto the pillow. I closed his eyes and told my stepmother, who was seated by the bedside praying, "It's over, Mom. Dad is dead." She startled me. I would never know why these were her first words to me after his death. My stepmother said, "Oh, he was so proud of you. He loved you so much." Somehow I knew from my own reaction that these words were saying something very important to me. They were like a sudden shaft of light, like a sudden thought I never absorbed before. Yet there was a definite edge of pain, as though I was growing to know my father better in death than I'd ever known him in life. Later, while a doctor was verifying death, I was leaning against the wall in the far corner of the room, crying softly. A nurse came over to me and put a comforting arm around me. I couldn't talk through my tears. I wanted to tell her, "I'm not crying because my father is dead. I'm crying because my father never told me he was proud of me. He never told me that he loved me." Of course, I was expected to know these things. I was expected to know the great part I played in his life, the great part I occupied in his heart. But he never told me. In my life, I couldn't communicate with my father in person. He was very good at counterpoint crazy making. And for me, the only way I could communicate was on tape. And what I would do is I would play a song like a Cat's in the Cradle, or the leader of the band, and then I would talk about my life and how I felt. There were a lot of things in my life I was very proud of because I was like him. And there were other things I wasn't very proud of. I felt real good I was able to send him those tapes before he died. And I think it's so important for us, why people are still with us, to praise them. It's so important for us to advocate for them. You have people in your buildings you love deeply. And the issue is whether we're willing to take the risk to intervene in their lives. Whether they're willing to take the risk. Whether they're willing to take the risk of leadership. It's another little issue here. I like to sometimes being the wellness leader in your building, you're going to feel like this lady. Can you see that lady? I had an opportunity to climb an area like that once. And the thing about that lady is that she's out there by herself. And indeed, you're the wellness representative for your area. And indeed, if you're going to make a difference, think of Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Jesus Christ, Moses. If you're going to make a difference, you got to get out there by yourself. Now, something else I want you to remember because it's important, because in this room, you have about 170 people who are helping you with the lines on both sides. They're supporting you. They're supporting you. And that lady isn't by herself out there. She's taking the risk. But she has people on both ends working the ropes to get her across. And I'm sure they supported her before she got out there. And they'll support her when she gets across and say, "Good job, well done." And you have support people here. You have Fran, and you have Mickey, and you have Mr. Keller. And you have people in your buildings that will support you. But it's really important for you to get out there and take the risk for the people that you love. Powerful stuff. And you know, taking risks are kind of interesting. The dilemma. To laugh is a risk of appearing a fool. To weep is a risk of appearing sentimental. To reach out for another is a risk involvement. To expose feelings is a risk rejection. To place your dreams before the crowd is a risk ridicule. To love is a risk not being loved in return. To go forward in the face of overwhelming odds is a risk failure. But risk must be taken. Because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, is nothing. He may avoid suffering and sorrow, but he cannot learn, feel, change, grow, or love. Chained by his servitudes, he is a slave. He has forfeited his freedom. Only a person who takes risks is free. I'd say by the most prolific author of all time. And so the issue of taking risks is real powerful, real powerful. I want to close now by asking you to take a risk with me. And what I'd like to have you do is sing along in a song with me. And I'll have the words for you. Maybe. Would you please reach underneath your chairs right now and pull out a green sheet of paper that should be under the front of your chair. And what you should have on there is you should have a rose, and the song to the words to the rose are on the inside. And I'd like to have you take the rose off, the piece of plastic, and I'd like to have you put it on your blouse or lapel or shirt or whatever, if you would do that. If you don't have a rose, then I'd like to have you come up. I have some extras up here, and I'd be glad to give you one. Would you please put that on for the moment? Take it off the piece of plastic. And like the wishing wells that you have on your table, a rose is another symbol that, at least for me, is a part of my life, as is this song. And I wear a rose in almost all of my clothing, even my casual clothing. Earlier in my life, I actually was a nuclear engineer. I worked in a nuclear power plant, and I started coaching baseball in the inner city of Columbus, Ohio. I have a master's degree in nuclear engineering. And out of that coaching baseball, I decided I didn't want to work in a nuclear power plant any longer, a research reactor. And I wanted to work with students. I changed my life, and I started teaching high school chemistry, physics, and mathematics in grades 7 through 12. And when I think back about the reason for that decision, and it had to do a lot with this song, I see the children coming into us in the fall. I see staff members that you'll be working with on your wellness committees. I see staff members in your building, those people that you love. Those people coming to you. This is the fall. You're going to work with them throughout the bitter winter months, through some tough times, because making any change is bitter winter months. Making any change is tough. But your mission is to work with those people as you work with the children. And throughout the bitter months, your mission is to return them in the springtime as roses. So as children, you return to your parents, and those staff members, you return them to their family as roses. And so right now, you're working with the seeds. And when I see a rose, it reminds me of my mission. And my mission is not just to get some tasks done or to do some things. My mission is to help people to grow, to get people done through work. Thank you for letting me touch your life today. I want to say one other thing. You don't have to do anything. But more than anything else, you are powerful people. Very, very powerful people. Is there any group of people more powerful than a group of teachers in any community? Every day you touch and change lives. Every day. You know how to do it. And indeed, that's what your leadership is all about. You are very, very powerful people. And I see you being empowered further by this school district. And I certainly commend you. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Dr. Slaven, and all his notes are in section 9 under staff development in your binders. All his quotes and everything, so that you'll have those for future reference. And for future staff development, you'll just be able to add those. At this point, you're going to work for about 10 minutes in your groups at your tables. At every table, there should be white sheets of paper called action plans. If there's not, raise your hand and we'll bring them around as we're going. What we want